obviously a lot of tariff talk here, but before we get to that, you had quite an anecdote. Putting politics aside, having quite a statement about former President Joe Biden's status. I mean, why was that so important to you?
Yeah, Karen and I were deeply saddened to learn of former President Biden's diagnosis of cancer. I lost a sister-in-law to colon cancer some 15 years ago, and I know what advanced cancer means to a family, and so I wanted to assure Joe and Jill and their entire family of our prayers for his treatment and a full recovery.
Talks about tariffs today. I mean, overall, a lot of people that make things move here in North Carolina that were a part of this. What did you hear from them that you hope can be passed along to the people who are making policy decisions?
Well, we thought it was important to come to North Carolina and really talk to job creators about the potential impact of tariffs, talk to retailers about the impact of tariffs on consumers. And I hope today people across North Carolina are better equipped to make the case to policymakers in Washington, D.C. that however well-intentioned the administration's policies might be, it's going to be Americans that ultimately pay the cost of tariffs in higher prices as well as lower wages and lost jobs. And look, there are lots of ways to get this economy moving again. In our administration, our 4 years, we used the threat of tariffs to negotiate the lowering of trade barriers, and America prospered. We need to get tough on China. We need to stay tough on China. But with regard to free nations around the world, we ought to use the threat of tariffs as leverage to open markets. And then at the same time, make those Trump-Pence tax cuts permanent, cut red tape like we heard about today, make energy low cost, and North Carolina and America will prosper.
When you talk about those tariffs that, you were involved in using them as leverage, did you hear things from the president during your time that would have made you believe that what we're seeing now is possible? Could you, if you were in those private hallways with him still, make sure that they didn't happen now?
Well, look, I know that the president has always believed that tariffs were an important part of America's industrial policy during the early years of our nation, and they were. Before we had an income tax, tariffs were principally the way that we financed the federal government. But at the end of the day, my hope is that the president, who built an incredible career in business, will listen to the broadest range of voices. That we again stay tough on China. I think we've got to stand, as our administration did, firm with China until they come to the table, open their markets, end the intellectual property theft that's been characteristic of the last 25 years. But beyond that, we ought to be getting with our trading partners in this hemisphere and around the world in free nations and using the threat of tariffs to open their markets. We open our markets. And America, as the most prosperous nation on earth, will benefit.
Last question.
I guess it's somewhere in the middle. Is that what you're hoping that the other people around the president right now are going to help him kind of find that middle?
Well, my hope is that at the end of the day, that the president stays sensitive to the voice of the American people, and there will likely be a lag in when the impact of these tariffs hits the bottom line for working families. But I hope when that time comes that the president will adjust, that they'll tack their sails, and that they'll recognize that freedom, free markets, free trade is an essential part of American prosperity, and will continue to be a voice for that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.